everybody to the regular scheduled city council meetings for tonight, Wednesday, March 11th. If we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, can you call the roll, please?
Mayor Beagle?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Resnick?
Here.
Councilmember Behrman?
Here.
Councilmember Gotchall?
Here.
Councilmember Grenlund Fox?
Here.
Councilmember Sharp?
Here.
Councilmember Smiley is excused tonight.
Very good. Thank you. Mr. Brown, do we have any changes or additions to the agenda tonight as presented?
Mayor, I have no changes or additions.
Thank you. Anybody on the dais? Seeing none. I need a motion to approve the minutes of the special city council meeting of February 25th, 2020.
So moved.
Support.
Any questions? Okay, got a motion and support to approve the minutes of the regular special city council meeting of February 25th, 2020. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Next up is the approval of the regular city council meeting of February 25th, 2020. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support. Any questions, comments, corrections? Seeing none, got a motion to approve and a second to approve the regular city council meeting minutes of February 25th, 2020. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We have no correspondence. Up next is the first call to the public. I'll read the rules for the call to the public. The public shall address the council during the call to the public, which shall be included on the agenda immediately after correspondence and again immediately after new business. The first call to the public immediately after correspondence shall be limited to agenda items only. A person shall not address the council in excess of 5 minutes unless time is extended by a majority vote of the council present. All persons wishing to address the council shall identify themselves and their place of residence and shall state their reason for addressing the council. And all comments made by the public shall be made directly to the council. Do we have anybody for the first call to the public? Seeing none, I'll close the first call to the public. Up next is city manager reports. First off is the fire monthly report.
I do have a question on that.
Go ahead, Councilmember.
Just regarding the runs, I do see that you had 3 basic life support transports.
Correct.
Following the same theme from the budget meeting, how many transports were then done by Huron Valley?
They typically do about 50% of our overall transports for the month. We had 99 calls, so they did about 50 of them.
So they did about 50 versus the 3 that we did?
Right. Some don't go to the hospital, even though we go and do the medical evaluation on them.
Would it be possible to have those numbers in the future just for
Absolutely.
comparison as we're getting into the budgeting?
Yes, sir.
I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes.
Anybody else? All right, we got the police monthly report for January 2020. Any questions? You guys are getting off easy tonight. Next up is the quarterly budget and investment reports for September 2019. All right, no questions there. Quarterly budget and investment reports for the month of December 2019. Very good. Next up is the consent agenda. All items listed under the consent agenda are considered routine by the City Council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member so requests, in which event the items will be moved from the consent agenda and added to the regular agenda at the end of unfinished business. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Okay. I've got a motion and support to approve the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, next up is unfinished business, and we have none. New business item number 1 is a request to authorize the execution of a professional service agreement with Laura Cloutier to provide services to the Wixom Downtown Development Authority as Executive Director in the amount of $45,000 annually for a period of 1 year. For a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Very good. Councilmember Grenlund Fox?
Steve, regarding the new employee for the DDA, so unless I missed it, I see that there's some equipment, so a computer and a printer and some other things.
Right.
So will that person have an office here? Will they have an office somewhere else? Will they work at home? What would that arrangement be?
Yeah, so the contractor is going to work out of an office that's going to be provided at City Hall. Is the initial arrangement, and basic equipment, the furniture and all that's going to be from surplus equipment that we have stored at DPW. So yes, this location will be at City Hall.
Okay, and then as far as reporting, I know we talked about that before. Will you have oversight over that?
Yeah, so the way that we had that discussion when we talked about the authorization of the position, so the person is going to be reporting to the DDA and the DDA board, but also to have oversight from the city manager's office as well, so that we hopefully can have a better handle on staying on the same page and staying on the same general line of approach to things in terms of economic development in the city as well as in the downtown.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Very good. Any other questions? Go ahead,
Thank you.
Councilmember Gatchel.
Thank you. Along the same line of oversight, looking at Exhibit A, the scope of services, the third kind of bullet or item listed says that final determination will come from the DDA chairperson or vice chairperson for items not voted on or approved, or in the case of conflicting directives. Under the accountability and oversight of the city manager, what exactly does that mean? Does that mean you have final authority to make a decision, or does that mean the DDA chair or vice chair has final authority to make a decision?
I think on the day-to-day, it speaks to, that's what they were speaking to in terms of the DDA chair and the vice chair, when there's a vote of the DDA board providing the overall direction, and then if something isn't spoken to of that day-to-day matter comes up, the DDA chair and vice chair would be providing that, but also with the city manager having the oversight of the position as well. So it's kind of like directly reporting to the DDA board and the vice chair and chair, but also having that accountability and oversight from the city manager's office. So the intent is to have both involved in the oversight of the position, but it just speaks specifically of the DDA's role there, and more generally of the city manager's is how I would summarize it.
Who has final decision-making authority? Like if there's something that's planned that might be contrary to something you feel as city manager would be to the city's larger benefit, and you don't want it to happen, it's not in our interest, are you able to make that call? Or does this present, because this is very vague, and I can see an argument frankly happening from both sides where you have oversight, but it really says DDA has decision-making authority.
Right, so that's something that's of concern, I think, to you as well as I'm sure other members of council and to me, and I would hope of the DDA as well, that we would be on the same page in terms of seeing the economic development interests of the city move forward, and the idea is that if it's good for the downtown, it should be good for the city as well. But there could be instances where that could become an issue, and I think that's why we wanted to have. There was discussion about not having the city manager in the reporting line, if you will, and we did have a discussion at council where you raised the question and asked that be included. I'm of the same mind that the city manager needs to have oversight of the position as well. And getting down to the hypothetical of what could happen on a specific direction from the DDA board, I'm hopeful that we'll avoid those kind of situations where we're going to be at odds with each other. But frankly, it does come up in other municipalities where that does occur. And this was an attempt to address that, to avoid that, because ultimately, I suppose there could be a decision that's made by the DDA board that isn't approved by me, that they direct the director to do something. Director does that, and then we would have to have a conversation about that, frankly. And I still do have oversight of the position. I bring my concerns to council, and we could get more serious about it from there, I suppose, if there was outright, a total lack of a meeting of the minds. I just hope that doesn't turn out to be the case in our situation, but certainly it has happened in other communities, I know, so it's a concern.
I guess it still remains a concern because, I mean, as I've kind of voiced when we've discussed other contractual obligations up here, I don't like using hope as a justification at times. We had that with the water tower, and that doesn't always work out, even though we end up getting paid back. So that is one potential sticking point that I don't like about this, is that there's no clear definition on who has final decision-making authority. One of the
Do you want to, if I can, we've got the chair and the vice chair that's come up to the mic. Do you want to hear from them on that? Maybe they'll have some clarification that will help with that.
Yeah, number one, thank you.
If you could introduce yourself.
Oh, sorry. Caleb Shum, attorney across the street, chair of the DDA.
I am Kristen Resnick. I am the vice chair of the DDA, and I am co-owner of Drafting Table Brewing Company.
So this is one of the concerns that came up that we batted back and forth, I think, since the early fall as well. So state law of Michigan says that executive director serves at the pleasure of the DDA. The DDA, we wanted to make sure that all of the highest levels of accountability were present. So we have three main bodies at issue, right? We have the Downtown Development Authority, we have City Council, who's the highest governing body, and then we also have the City Manager here, who oversees all the personnel. So Mayor sits on DDA, who directly supervises the day-to-day operations of the contractor in this case, and then that's where the accountability and oversight comes in with the City Manager as well. So in regards to your concerns, first of all, we have a real-time reporting structure that we're going to institute. So anything financial or any action at all is viewable in real time in terms of reporting to all involved, to Mayor on City Council, to Steve for City Management, and to us for the DDA. In the instance where there is conflict, it's actually resolved by missions being assigned to the contractor, and the contractor using their professional judgment to execute those. This is specifically structured as an independent contractor agreement, one of the prime factors for which is the distancing of control from the person who is giving employment, which would make them the client really, to the person performing the work, because it's a professional services agreement. So we actually cannot hold their hand and tell them to press this button. We give them the mission to execute an event. They have the expertise to go and do it. So that conflict is actually less able to appear because there's not day-to-day hand-holding. So hopefully that gives some comfort there. In regards to if for some reason we decided to, on our own, make them do something, that would not get very far because we couldn't even execute a vote to have them do it because of the fact that Mayor sits right on the DDA board and is present at all of those meetings. So City Council is embedded in the DDA, and then everything is real-time transparent to City Manager.
And then also with that, all the financials, they do not have authority to spend money without our approval. Also with that, we cannot spend any monies that are over $3,000 because we have to bring it to you guys for approval.
Can I jump in real quick? Sure. Can you guys make an arrangement where maybe every other month it's that real-time report isn't included in our council packet so we get it and we can see?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks.
Thank you for the explanation. I understand, being an independent contractor myself, I understand the rules of what people can and can't tell me to do at times. But I know from I'm associated with a larger brokerage, so obviously there's not specific rules that or mandates, but obviously you want to keep your association or your contract, since this is up annually, I think, initially, then 2 one-year extensions. So there is some favorability toward who is making decisions and who you listen to. And I can appreciate that the mayor is on the DDA board. It might be nice if this wording is developed a little bit more to say exactly who has final authority. That's my main concern, rather than assigning or not even assigning, leaving it up to an independent contractor to make the decision it really, we have the city manager, he's really in charge of the day-to-day. Not the mayor, not us as council, so that's where I think things should end ultimately to me. The second part of this structure that I did have a problem with was the independent contractor status. I understand from a cost perspective, and trying to keep legacy costs down. I understand that, but again, it's the manageability aspect of things, and it's something that I had voiced last spring when we were going through budget meetings. And I don't think we'll ever get to this point, but there have been cases where entire DDA boards have had to be cleared out because there is like a mini kingdom going on. And I don't expect that to happen, I don't want it to happen, but we have to have some mechanism to ensure it isn't going to happen. And I don't think leaving it as an independent contractor, not contracted by the city of Wixom, being contracted more so by the Downtown Development Authority, I don't think this structure gives the city the ability to protect itself and the greater interests of the city. So I've been through this contract a few times, been thinking about this for a while, and I'm still very torn on the structure of this, the wording of the authority of who has final decision-making authority. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. I understand it's a one-year term, but to me, there's a lot that should be worked on more than probably voting on this tonight, if it were up to me. Thank you.
Anybody else? Councilman Deputy Mayor Resnick.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I think that I'm satisfied with it because, it does say that it's under the accountability and oversight of the city manager. And it's not too different from other communities in this state. And I've seen places where it works. And there are times when conflicts arise. I know one in northern Michigan town where DDA, very, very strong DDA, very, very wealthy DDA, comes into conflict based on multiple business interests when it's trying to do a particular event. And the village council in that case is involved, and the final vote comes to them anyway through their village manager. So I don't see any issues with it. And like I said, if we have to revise it in the second year, if we do see conflicts like that from a legality standpoint, and I think Mr. Sheng, being a lawyer, I think he's taken a lot of these things in the contract into in the context of the independent contractor agreement, so I'm in support of it.
Yeah, and that's kind of concern was passed back and forth quite a bit with the city attorney as well. So the independent contractor status was a prime area of back and forth. We were very encouraged that they were pretty similar to being on the same page as we were with it. Their comments to us actually were a lot of times in regards to this that it seemed to be sometimes atypically or unnecessarily strong in favor of protecting the city, which was great for us to hear. So we really erred on the side of putting up a higher fence that protects the city in this case, because what we tried to do was kind of like building a vehicle, making sure that it was a 5-star safety rating, no matter who was in the driver's seat. And then after that, bolting on the quality of life, features that would make expediency possible. In terms of that direct type control, that's always something where, even in the best of circumstances, even the most wonderfully coded document, real life takes its turn, right? And so that's why we're fortunate to have someone who's essentially trained for this position over the past year or two. 2 years of experience and understanding the minds of everyone that sits up there, of everyone in the city, all the businesses that they serve. That's one of the best insurances that we can have, and we're very fortunate to have that.
Anybody else?
My only thoughts on it would be is that, I think we've taken our time at getting to this point, and I think it's time for us to move forward with hiring an executive director, because I know that this process has been drawn out, and I think the longer we wait, the more detrimental this is going to be to our city and our downtown area. We need to get this person hired as our independent contractor and working to better our downtown area.
Steve, are you satisfied with this contract and happy with how it reads? And
Yeah, there was a lot of give and take that we started off with a much simpler contract, as you recall. We brought it up for council approval, and then we had a lot of rewriting that was done through essentially Caleb's efforts to make some changes to it to reflect some things that he thought was important from the standpoint of the status as a contractor, and that's something I wanted to reemphasize. It's not an employee, it's a contract position, it's a contractor that would be working under a contract with a professional services agreement with the city. So there were lots of changes to the wording that came about. If you compare the first document to this document, you know, the length of it is quite different, the content of it is quite different. I'm pleased with the fact that I think it does have good protections in place for certain aspects of things in terms of the relationship between the city and the contractor, the DDA and the contractor. And I think that, as was mentioned by Deputy Mayor Resnick, if there's anything that needs to be done in terms of tweaking the agreement, we have a period of time that we can do that within a year's time and see if there's some things that need to be readdressed. And I do think that, you know, the potential for having some of those conflicts has been well demonstrated in other communities. It has occurred in some cases, and it has happened in many cases, in fact. And that's something that's a concern, and I think we did address that in this document with that accountability and oversight of the city manager to keep me in the loop in terms of having that oversight function. And then the last thing I'll say is the ultimate control that the city has is whether we allow the funding arrangement for the DDA to continue, frankly. So if something gets too far afield, if that ever becomes the case, and I certainly hope that wouldn't become the case, but if anything like that were to come about and there was a situation where there was some kind of loggerhead kind of thing happening between the DDA and the city, we can always look at whether we want to continue to do the tax capture or not, and we have ultimate control over that in the long run. So
Thank you.
that's a protection that's built in for the city.
Councilman Gatchell.
Thank you. One last question looking through this is in section 1, duties and performance. And at the very bottom, it makes a statement that it is unlikely that the stated service objectives can be fulfilled satisfactorily with less than an average of 25 hours of professional services performed per week. Are we allowed to, because that sounds like kind of a mandatory minimum, are we allowed to stipulate that?
That was also a specific area that was addressed, and that was crafted this way specifically for that. So obviously you understand the avoidance of having to impose a time threshold, right? Because you can't control that for a contractor. So we wanted to still be able to strictly peg evaluation to a performance metric. And so instead what we have is the task progress, and that's reported in real time and also at regular intervals. This was added in here. Again, this is one of the things the city attorney pointed out was especially robust, and we wanted to keep that in because it's especially robust, is that it still places an expectation on the contractor to fulfill their job by demonstrating that amount of work while not having actual performance and evaluation and then continuation of hiring be premised on the performance of an actual hourly count per week. So we were trying to thread the needle there very specifically to keep the city very clearly away from exercising control over an area where it's not, you know, usually proper to do so. And again, this is just that super distance safeguard that we wanted to put, again, because if one day it's a different person that's occupying this agreement, we want to be sure that the city is insulated against any vagueness or argument there. So hopefully that
If I can add a little bit to that, my take on why that language is in there the way it is as you well know from what you've discussed, and as Caleb knows, and the city attorney knows, that having that in there as a specific hourly requirement would not pass legal muster, but this is just sort of a way to put it out there that there is an understanding that you're going to have to put in hours, and the ballpark hours is basically 25. So it doesn't set the expectation that it's 25 hours, but it sort of addresses the fact that realistically you're going to have to spend a time to fulfill the duties that are required of this position, and it puts that 25 hours out there more or less as a discussion point, as not a requirement or a black and white expectation, but it just puts it out there that that's something that we would expect would be in that area of hours without requiring it.
Exactly. We didn't want someone to feel like they could, and Laura would never do this, but again, if someone else ends up sitting in that chair, we want to be very clear to them that they can't just kind of skirt by on a bare minimum.
Is there any wording, I'm trying to go back through here again, Is there any wording in the contract that you recall, because I know that the mayor has to sign off on this, and the city manager, but the contract is actually between the DDA and the contractor. Is there any language in here that just says that the city is signing off essentially by way of we're giving some resources in terms of office space, but we really aren't addressing any terms of this contract or payment to the contract?
No, so those kinds of, well, he already talked about just some, generous allowances in terms of space and equipment. Those would all be contracted between the DDA and the city. So if there's gonna be rent charge, things like that, we pay out of our pocket for it. The city is included in here, even though it's between the DDA and the contractor. We made a huge effort to include the city in here with behind the shield of liability protection as well. So the city is in there in a beneficial way. Again, just behind a shield that says that they're indemnified, et cetera, et cetera. But other than that, yeah, anything that the city needs from us, the DDA definitely come to us.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Resnick?
Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure if the newer members of council know Laura. If she could please come up and maybe introduce herself. I'm not sure.
Hello, I'm Laura Cloutier. I'm a 15-year resident, and I've been working with the DDA the past 2 years when I got hired in with the city. I grew up in a public service family, as my father was on zoning board of appeals for the city of Southfield. My mother worked for the city of Southfield for 30 years, so I'm very familiar with municipality work, and I look forward to serving this community and making us have the best downtown ever. So I appreciate Caleb and Steve's and the city attorney's hard work on this contract. And I just look forward to serving and working with everybody here.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Yeah, I know that this contract has been going back and forth between everybody for about the last 3 or 4 weeks, and there was a lot of time and effort put into it, and thank everybody for that. And I'm good with this, and I'm pleased with the executive director issue. My only issue is, and I don't know if we have to amend the motion or not, but I would feel more comfortable signing this contract after we have the proof of insurance and the WC 337 in our hands.
Do you want to address that, Ken?
Yeah, so I think an easy way to do that would if there were to be approval of the contract, then authorizing the mayor to sign contingent on provision of the COI and the other documentation to you.
Very good. Thank you.
Do you want to add that language?
Yes, please.
So how do you want to word it, subject to the provision of the required documentation to the city?
Correct.
Something akin to that?
Yep.
Okay. Is that fine?
Yes, perfect.
So can you just add that, or do
Yeah.
they have to?
I'll do an amended motion.
Okay, very good, thank you. Anybody else? Yeah, do we have to second that, or are we good?
I'll use the same people, if that's okay?
Good.
I'm good with the amendments.
Yes.
You guys seconded the first one.
All right.
Second the amendment.
All right, I got a motion and a second to approve the request to authorize the execution of a professional service agreement with Laura Cloutier to provide services to the Wixom Downtown Development Authority as Executive Director in the amount of $45,000 annually for a period of 1 year. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations, and I think I'm looking forward to you and working hand in hand with some of our city departments. I think between the two of our city and the DDA, we can really enhance some of our events and stuff down here. It can be beneficial for both of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next up is new business number 2, a recommendation to introduce an ordinance to amend the Code of Ordinances for the City of Wixom. Chapter 9.20, offenses by or against minors, by amending Section 9.20.0 9.060 and section 9.20.070 to include vapor and alternative nicotine products and raise the legal age to purchase these products to 21. Do I have a motion?
Support?
Thank you. I'll turn it over to City Manager Brown at this time.
Right, so I had been contacted by a representative of the city attorney's office who had spoken to me about this issue and the fact that he had had conversations with the judges from the local district court about this, and the desire to have, from the district court level, to have all the communities in the area pass something that would address these specific issues. As you know, it's something that's pretty topical right now and becoming a serious concern for people, the potential impact of these alternative vapor and nicotine products that are specifically in relation to younger users of those products. So they had prepared the ordinance amendment that you have before you today to make the necessary adjustments to the sections that are referenced, .060 and .070. And the specific question that sort of had hung us up for a little while was the age, the legal age to be required for purchasing of these products. Some communities had passed local ordinance changes to reflect 21. But the state had not yet passed the language of 21. And in point of fact, the state still has not passed that. So the state law currently is at 18 years of age for tobacco products. But we have received assurance that that's about to change at the state level, and there will be an age change to 21. So we felt comfortable with proceeding with the ordinance amendment to put it before you tonight for introduction and hopefully an enactment at a later date, pending any kind of feedback that we have from council or the mayor on the current content of the ordinance amendment as it stands. So this was drafted by the city attorney's office, by Mr. Michael Hanchett, and it was approved by Carol Rosati, our main attorney from that office as well. And it's put before you tonight for introduction, and it would have the effect of addressing these products in our ordinance and then raising the legal age to purchase those products to 21.
Deputy Mayor Resnick.
Thank you. City Manager Brown, with the state statute not through yet, and this is an introduction of a local ordinance,
Right.
will the retailers, and there's probably got to be a dozen or so of them within the city limits, will they be notified that it's now a city ordinance?
Yeah, we would work through the police department as to how we could best accomplish that and exactly how we would go about it. As I mentioned, I do expect the action to happen at the state level pretty quickly. That's why we introduced it at the time we did. And we did it at 21 because we didn't want to get into amending an amendment quickly thereafter. We could have stayed at 18 consistent with the state law, but we're sure that that's about to change.
Yeah, without the state statute being there, I was wondering that a lot of these people may not know or be aware.
The way we will handle that is not to make enforcement of the age of 21 a priority until after the state law has been changed.
Okay.
But we expect that to happen very quickly.
Very quick.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I would just note that we should possibly change the name of the mayor.
Did we have something wrong there?
Oh.
Man, no respect.
Page 5.
Oh, really?
Yeah, if we could just change that.
Oh, I apologize. I didn't look at it very closely, apparently. Wow, that's a holdover from not too long ago. I apologize. We'll fix that.
Councilmember Sharp.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Brown, why are we doing this? If the state is undertaking this, is there an advantage to the city to be going through the legal process and engaging lawyers and changing communications I support it, generally speaking. I'm just not sure why, if it's at the state level, very close, is there an advantage to the city to be doing this now?
Frankly, I believe it was just a priority of the local district court to get all the communities on the same page on this, and we had not addressed vaping products and alternative nicotine products in our ordinance change, and this is a way to bring that about and be set on that front, so that when the state law comes into play on the age change to 21, then we're ready to go and it's complete and we're in compliance with that. I think there's been other cities in municipalities around us that have already taken the action, and we were kind of a little bit slower to do it because of the concern about the state law differential, and we've been assured that's about to change. So basically, it's just it was introduce when it was, if that's the question, the timing, as opposed to waiting for
Yeah,
afterwards, or
that.
or having a local ordinance.
Yeah, which,
period.
does ours, isn't ours subservient to the state ordinance in this, or how?
Yeah,
I don't know how that
there
works.
are those issues, and it was really a priority of the district court that our ordinances be consistent with the state laws, what they were looking for. That's something that's of great concern to the local district court, that be the case. This gentleman that drafted it sits on a committee that was established by the local district court to address this very issue. So I think it's kind of a, what I would term a legislative priority there to get the communities under the district court on the same page on this and have it in their local ordinances. It's to our benefit as well if we don't have a local ordinance, anything that happens on any kind of revenue front would always go to the court, but that's probably not a big impact one way or the other. That probably has zero impact, but that sometimes can be a concern. I think it's mostly just related to consistency.
So if the state changed it, we would have to follow suit at that point and change our ordinances.
Yeah, there would be an issue as being inconsistent with state law, correct? Right. And ultimately, if we don't have that, I suppose you could say we're inconsistent with state law as well, but I think it's really just a matter of being something that has been approached from the district court level as something they thought was important. So.
I had a conversation in a meeting with Judge Reeds on this, and he was kind of concerned that we were one of the only communities in the area that still had it at 18, and so we talked about it, and we thought that this should be done, and he just wants everybody on the same page for now. So.
Okay. Once the state does it, we'll all be on the same page
we'll all be on the same
regardless.
page,
won't
yeah.
we? So, okay.
Councilmember Gatchel.
Thank you. Reading through this, definitions of like public place, it doesn't explicitly say schools. And I was wondering, to me it's not clear whether or not schools are covered under the public place definition, because it's, I don't know, I would appreciate if we could just spell it out, because I know that is a concern within the school district and within schools. So I would appreciate it if we can have a conversation about adding that to the list.
I'll talk to Mr. Hanchett about that, yes.
Yeah, that way it's just not its own separate thing where we don't have the ability to support the school district. Then in looking at the community service, it directly stipulates that community services for hospice and long-term elderly care and whatnot. How is that arrived at, and why are we explicitly stating what the service has to be?
Which page are you on, Councilman?
It talks about, I didn't write down the section, so now I have to find it.
Otherwise, I can find it, that's fine, you're just,
I think it's page
it's
3
listed in
under,
a few different sections.
yeah, page 3 on attachment 2, item 3.
okay.
And then item 2 on page 2, item 1 and 2.
Yeah,
Okay.
1B, 1A. What, basic, yeah. 1, 2, and 3.
Is this just the same language that we took from what Novi and the other communities have,
Yeah, I
or?
think there's been involvement with our city attorney's office and other communities, and it's similar to what's been enacted in other places, but we can address specific concerns by that certainly, so I'll bring
Yeah,
those up.
just hadn't, I mean, when we went through the marijuana paraphernalia
Right.
discussions and whatnot, and a bunch of the other ordinances, I had never seen it spelled out exactly what community service you would be doing. So that seemed unique to me. Not that it's a bad thing, but it just seemed limiting and,
Maybe a little bit too into the weeds there.
yeah.
Yeah, I understand.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else? All right. I've got a motion and a second to approve the recommendation to introduce an ordinance to amend the Code of Ordinances for the City of Wixom, Chapter 9.20, offenses by or against minors by amending Section 9.2.060 and Section 9.20.070 to include vapor and alternative nicotine products and raise the legal age to purchase these products to 21. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Good. Thank you. New business number 3 is an authorization to waive the bid process and purchase water meters, electronic radio readers, and related supplies from the sole source provider, Aetna Supply Company of Wixom, Michigan, in the amount not to exceed $25,000 annually at fixed prices for 2 years, and execute a 3-year extension at fixed pricing as warranted. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Thank you. Any questions? Deputy Mayor Resnick?
Maybe Ruben might have, or Tim might have the answer to this. How far along are we with the city's replacement to these census meters? I believe we started about 6 years ago.
Yeah, we did start about 6 years ago, and the census meters have been in place for almost 20 years throughout the system. So we continue to march down that path. And I believe there's maybe 600-700 that need of the oldest ones that need to be replaced first, and then we're on a continuous cycle after that yet. So
Okay, so we've all been replaced to the census meters, but
there are still some Neptune meters that are out there.
and that
I don't know
requires
the
a
exact count, but
reader to actually go up to it, right?
yes. And they are the majority of them are touch read as well as radio read, and we continue to do that.
So these just fail regularly, or?
They do, and as meters age, they get a little slower, and it's to the utilities' benefit to replace them as they do. AWWA, or American Water Works standards. Anything less than like 96% accuracy should be replaced. On the high end, there are some that could be 102 or 103, and that's still acceptable. But usually, on average, they're right around 99 to 100% on accuracy.
And these still require the truck or whatever, the radio, to
yes.
be in near vicinity,
Yep.
right?
Now there are other reading systems that are out there, a fixed network system that could be implemented. We don't have that in the budget at this point, and we would need to really seriously think about that before implementing something to that measure.
Yeah, I'm just familiar with a lot what's going on in Europe right now, and
Yes.
and they're decades ahead. on the
They are,
technology,
and
so.
actually, I was at a conference there on personal business, but then just attended one, and it is they are very far ahead of us as far as the smart meter reading goes. Some of them even implement meter reading, real-time meter reading with the electric, the gas, and the water all tied into the same systems, and very interesting technology that they have.
Yeah, we might just start thinking about it, because it may be less expensive to implement the new system.
Yes, and early warning on detection of leaks. For example, if a homeowner is away on vacation or something, there's technologies even to shut off your meter, shut off the water from your phone, if you will. So a homeowner could do that. All of those kind of things add expenses that are unique, and they would be interesting to look at, but as an expense for a utility of our size, I'm not sure it warrants the expense.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right. This item came in a pretty good time, I think, because we've had an issue with some of our meters not being read properly, and some people were getting some large water bills. And so the reason why we initiated this program to begin with is to maintain the accuracy of the water meter reading and billing process, and by replacing the old units and putting the new ones in, it should result in accurate billing, and we won't have the billing complaints and stuff as we have the past couple of weeks. I know F&V has been swamped with calls from people who got some pretty high water bills, and Hopefully this takes care of that. So with that, I've got a motion and a second to approve the authorization to waive the bid process and purchase water meters, electronic radio readers, and related supplies from the sole source provider, Aetna Supply Company of Wixom, Michigan, in the amount not to exceed $25,000 annually at fixed prices for 2 years, and execute a 3-year extension at fixed prices as warranted. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Very good. Next up is a call to the public. The rules to the call to the public are the same as the first call, except for this time you can talk about whatever is on your mind. Do I have anybody for the second call to the public?
Russ Meredith, I live at 378 Fletcher. I just wanted to commend the administration and the city for the quickly posting information on the COVID 2019. There's some really lousy information out there on the internet and other forms of media, and what you put out there is really accurate, it's spot on, it's great stuff, it's very useful for the cities, for the citizens. Second of all, I want to commend Tim and the DPW staff. We had sort of a water leak in our neighborhood, and they got out there right on top of it, they're really fast and got taken care of. I want to thank Kathy and Buck and her staff for the election stuff. It went really well from what I saw. And then finally, my wife, I only got 5 minutes, so my wife tells me I talk too fast. But I got to do this quickly. My wife Roberta and I are both with the Michigan Airline Trails Friends Group, and we want to thank the city for the outstanding support you've been giving to the trail. Where we live in Fletcher, you can see people using it. And there's at least 100 people on there most days. On weekends, it's 200-300 people. Even the winter, there was like 80-90 people a day walking and riding bikes with tires that are like, bigger than what I have in my car, going up and down there. And let you know that in the first couple weeks of May, the Detroit Institute of Art will be placing 4 replica artworks along the trail. And sometime in the first couple weeks of May, they're going to have a docent out there doing a walking tour is the plan. So can describe the work to people. So it's something you might want to be involved in and take a look at. But really do appreciate the city's support to the trail. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
5 minutes less.
Anybody else?
I could have taken 6.
Yeah. Come on up.
You want this?
Yeah. I'm Judy Selinsky from 1330 Woodbridge Lane in Blue Lakewood. About the water bills, I noticed that the service charge went up 50% in the last year and a half. Now we're talking about new meters. Is it going to go up more? And what is the reason for that large increase? And is there any restitution or anything we're getting because the meters weren't read properly? And is there some kind of payment plan in place for anybody that did get a large bill?
Do you want Tim to address this? Tim, do you want to talk about this real quick?
Sure.
Thank you.
Let me start off with a couple things. Go ahead, Tim, you can go to the mic. The way the charges are established at the city, we have an outside consultant from an organization called Utility Financial Services that works with us in establishing appropriate charge levels for recovering the costs that the city experiences in providing water and sewer service to the residents. And there is a mix of charges between what's referred to as fixed costs and what's referred to as consumption charges or usage charges, right? So in the past, the mix might have been balanced more towards the consumption side, the usage side, and then recently over the years, as the word has been getting out and people have been successfully encouraging people to conserve water consumption's going down, and the shifting in the cost has changed because the city still has the expenses of providing the staffing to make sure that the plant is operating safely and water is being treated so that the water is safe and appropriate for your use. Our costs are still there to provide that water when you turn on the tap, when you flush the toilet, those kind of things. So there is a change in terms of the balance between usage and fixed costs. So those things are reflected in our billing formula, if you will, that was established by this outside consultant. And the idea is just to cover the city's costs, and that's what we're doing. I'll let Tim address the rest of it, but I wanted to make sure I mentioned that up front. That's how the costs are arranged, are arrived at The council's well aware of the utility financial services relationship that have been on the council in the past. The representative usually comes out to make a presentation to the city about why the charges were being set the way they were. So
There are other factors too that utility bills or water especially is rated on. One of them, we receive our water from Great Lakes Water Authority. We do have a contract, a 30-year contract with them, and this last 5 years we've been able to, as a group or as a number of member communities, have been able to keep their increases incrementally low. And 10 plus years ago, they were increasing, say, 10% each year. And that was contracted so that we could utilize our storage. And that was one of the reasons years ago that the city actually put in a water tower, is to maintain a peak usage and an hourly usage of that water. So we're contracted based on hourly usage and daily usage of that water from Great Lakes. The last 5 years, because we've been so consistent with that, it's remained less than 4% each year, which is about the CPI. Now, we're also, as Steve mentioned, some of those fixed costs, because we have or are starting to recognize an aging infrastructure in the area, it's not getting any newer. We want to make sure that we have the funds prepared to replace these things as they break and pay through our enterprise funds. So there's a recommendation through our utilities to maintain a specific amount of cash on hand, if you will, to make sure that we can pay for emergencies when they happen. Those are fixed costs that we want to maintain. It's fiscally responsible to do that. Now, as far as the services that I think you're referring to for the specific problem that we had recently with multiple reads that were not actual reads, they were estimates. They were estimated low, unfortunately, and so that caused a problem with the one that was actual being compounded by how much water was used. And we are taking each of those accounts into consideration, and we can work on payment plans if necessary, and we want to make sure that they continue to be accurate. So if there are problems with meters, that's why we have a meter replacement program. We will replace them. If there are problems with the radio reads, we will look at replacing that as well, so that they're as accurate as possible.
Now, who would we talk to for these considerations?
So the considerations, we have Fleece and Vandenbrink is our contract operators, and they maintain the water billing for the city, and water and sewer billing for the city. It is monitored, I guess, by our finance department as well, but they are in charge of it, and they have the records. If there are questions, we can step in, but we feel that they are well qualified to do this work, and they will get down to the issues at hand for each resident.
So the one on the bill is the one that we talked to?
Yes, that
Okay.
248-960-0870.
Hey, Tim, and also if they want to grab a card from Ruben or Heather, they could probably
they are here
get
tonight.
that, so.
We can
Yeah, I talked to her earlier.
Yes.
And she said she was gonna,
Yep, we will work together to
because I talked to
see what-
people at the city hall, and they said, we don't do it. And then I talked to them earlier, not today, earlier, and they said, no, you gotta talk to the city. So nobody seemed to know
So that's,
who is gonna.
the procedure is to specifically get each account information separately. That'll be handled through Fleece and Vandenbrink. We'll look at it, they will talk with the resident and see where the needs are, and we'll come up with a plan for you.
And are they holding the older company any responsible, some liability for not doing their job?
There, did you want to?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
There's no documentation or requirement in the contract about specifically whether it can be this type of read or that type of read. There's requirements that reads be done and billing be done. And in point of fact on this, in terms of the size of a water bill, as Tim has mentioned, what's happening is we're having a period of time where some estimated reads were done over a period of a few billing cycles, and then when the new company came in and discovered what was going on in terms of those estimated reads and went out and performed actual reads, which required more manual work on their part, they've reduced the number of estimated reads from the last cycle, which was well over 1,100 reads, to 80 reads in this last cycle. So they've addressed that, and because of that, we're now getting the billing caught up with reality, essentially. So the water usage was there over those periods of time when they were estimated, but they weren't billed properly because they were estimates, right? And if the estimates were done based on a low usage period of time and you ended up using a lot of water that particular period of time, that's where the issues are coming up, and it's being caught up. Those underbillings over the past few cycles are being caught up in this current cycle. And also because of a delay that resulted from this situations that were going on with the reads. We're also actually in a bit of a long quarter here. There was actually an additional period of time that was billed in this quarter, so it's longer than a quarter. So the bad news is this bill was substantially higher than prior bills because of the estimates and because of that additional billing period. But the next bill will actually, be back in line with your actual usage because we'll get actual reads. And then secondly, it'll be actually a short period of time as well. So the bill will actually be a little bit lower than usual in this upcoming billing cycle because of that added period of time that was added on to the last cycle that will likewise not be present in the current cycle, if that makes sense. So you got a long bill in this last bill, you'll get a short bill in the next bill.
It wasn't indicated on the bill that there was a long period either.
Right.
So you really, or we're just guessing the usage comparison with the prior year.
Yeah, the reads were done when the reads were done because of the issues with how many needed to be manually handled because of what happened with the prior billing cycles.
Is there any accountability for not doing?
I've talked on that subject. I can't really answer it quite yet. We have some conversations going on about whether there's any options for the city there. But in reality, as long as the billing gets done accurately in the long run and it gets trued up with an actual read, I'm not sure if we're going to have anything to do there or not. But we are pursuing that option and talking with our legal counsel about whether there's any issue there.
Yeah. And we're working with F&V to make sure that doesn't happen again too. So.
Yeah, as I mentioned, the estimated reads were dropped from over 1,100 to 80. So.
Once an actual read's made, it should show what was used more. Should show the amount of use. So the math should document it, right?
Yeah. So
we
like.
kind of went through that. I'm sorry, I'm Fred Schaefer.
If you want to go to the mic so people can hear what you're saying. So.
We kind of went through the math on that a little bit.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't working out. So maybe you can show me where it is, or could, but it seemed to come up where it was, what do we say, about $600 extra? Yeah. And we figured based on the documentation we could get together and do the math on it, it should be about 200. So it's not as if it's some small difference. And we understand there's some usage charges with the meters and so forth. And I guess one of the questions is why all of a sudden instead of a little bit at a time on that. But that kind of is what it is. I don't want to be a dead horse on that. But the fact of the matter is the math, unless we're looking at math wrong, and it would be the first math equation we've done, but doesn't make sense. We should be able to see that on paper that this times this will give us what we're being charged on.
Can you introduce yourself first?
Yeah, my name is Fred Schaefer.
Okay, thanks, Fred. Yep, and when you meet with the people from F&V, they'll go over all that with you.
Okay.
They're going to compare things, they're going to explain things to you and work things out.
Have you called that number yet on the water bill and asked them to go through it with you?
Yep. She was doing that.
Yes, so do that, and then afterwards.
Those are all going to be taken on a one-on-one basis then?
Yep.
Yes, they will talk with you.
Right.
And they've mentioned that specifically in a report to me, that they've been doing a lot of that with individual homeowners and people that have concerns about water bills. So they will do that with you. They'll walk you through how the bill was arrived at, and if you have concerns about the math from there.
Questioning, disputing whether there was an increase in use. Yeah. That should be provable, okay? Right. The rates are provable. Those are fixed numbers. So, but the math doesn't make them work out to what the
And that's what I'm saying. We'll go through that. If there's still questions after that, then we'll revisit it. But I'm confident they'll be able to explain to you how the bill came up the way it was. If it doesn't work out, contact Tim. Thank you.
Hey, Tim, could you make clarification because of the comment that was made that a old worn meter will tend to underreport actual water flow? Is that correct?
That
statement?
is,
Okay.
that is a correct statement.
Not contrary, so,
No.
okay.
I haven't seen, I don't know of any meters that read fast.
Yeah, because it tends to wear out an internal.
These are yeah, typically mechanical. Now, there are newer meters that aren't as mechanical, and but even at that point, they tend to read slower than normal after they get old.
Thanks.
And that's why it's to the city's detriment in those cases. It tends to underread and underreport, creating a water loss, what's referred to as a water loss in the business, right? Because Detroit charges us for X number of dollars of water that was provided. If we only bill out X minus Y, that Y is water loss.
I just wanted to make sure you clarified it.
That's actually one of our financial checks each quarter is how much was actually the consumption that was read versus how much was billed from Great Lakes Water Authority. We checked that out, and it kind of proved out last quarter, and we're like, well, where is it?
Get the system upgraded to 21st century technology and it'll eliminate it.
That would be really neat.
That's where we discovered the issue with the large number of estimated reads. That's where it first came to light, when we had that larger water loss than expected.
Right, and as a homeowner, it's always a good idea to look at the actual read and look at your meter and verify that number is what it says it is. And that's another check that each homeowner could do.
Very good. Anybody else for the second call to the public? Seeing none, I'll close the second call to the public and move on to city manager comments.
So the city manager updates before you this evening. There's a couple of things on there. Congratulations to the city clerk because she's going to get to do another election here soon in May. She's very excited about it. She's in a stretch of busy time with elections, and then things will slow down when the presidential election happens later on, so it'll be all good. So that's something that's in the offing. The DPW's got some information on there about participating with the Oakland County Bicentennial Celebration. We have some oak bar root seedlings available to residents. If anybody's interested in those, I encourage you to contact the DPW and express your interest in that. That's something we would make available to residents that are interested. And the last thing is the fire rescue that was recently delivered to the city and was available before and after the council meeting for council to take a look at it. Very excited to have a new rescue in town. It's been a long time coming. I know Chief Roberts has been spending a lot of time on that task in terms of getting it developed and spec'd out, and then verifying. There's a lot of verification that has to be done on these vehicles because of the complexity that's involved. And now we have it delivered here. There's lots of neat features that were engineered into it thanks to the chief and other people in the fire department's feedback. So if you haven't yet checked that out, I encourage you to do that. And then there's the usual set of dates to remember that are provided as well. I encourage you to take a look at that, and residents to take a look at that on our website and other sources, and make sure they participate in the events they're interested in. And other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions or requests for additional information you might have today. Can our clerk give us an update on the election yesterday?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Wixom has 10,819 registered voters. There were 3,460 of them that voted in yesterday's election, which is about 32%. With the passage of Proposal 3 in 2018, that the number of absentee ballots has increased immensely. For this election, we issued 1,857 absentees. During the same election 4 years ago in 2016, we only issued 525. With the number of candidates who dropped out of the race, Crystal and I had to issue 76 new absentee ballots to people who requested another ballot. And that happened on Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Monday before the election. Also, because of Proposal 3, we registered 32 new voters on Election Day. One of the problems that I didn't plan on for yesterday was the loss of the internet for about 2.5 hours. That made registering new voters nearly impossible since the Michigan voter registration is live, connected to the entire state of Michigan. Director Moore was incredibly helpful by working to provide a hotspot to connect us to the state's voter file. Also, Cheryl Lucas worked hard to get results from Comcast and brought us up and running in no time. And I'm grateful for both of their assistance. That's about it, unless anybody has any questions.
Very good, thank you. All right, council comments. Councilmember Berman.
Well, all I would say is the election seemed to go smooth for me yesterday. I didn't have to wait. My wife came up. She said it was going smooth. So although you had some internet issues, it looks like a clean show was put on. And I congratulate you and your office for doing that once again. And look forward to seeing you doing it again in a couple weeks.
Thank you. Councilmember Gatchel.
Thank you. I also wanted to congratulate and thank the city clerk and her office and all the poll workers for yesterday's work. I did one thing that I did want to point out. I know we have the larger boards with all of the street names on there for the different precincts. I might recommend blowing up the precinct maps as well. I know when I was doing the initial form to sign in, someone came in and she said she was voting for the first time ever, wanted to check if she was in the right area, and she had seen Wixom Road listed on the board and took that to mean all of Wixom. So I found out where she actually lived on the map and pointed out she should be across the pond, but that might be helpful as well, just to eliminate confusion. And then talking about the water bills, I guess there were a lot of questions asked. Can it be simplified, I guess? So was the problem that Suez was doing too many estimated reads and people weren't being billed as much as they should have? And now we're catching up? Or is it kind of the reverse, that we did too many estimateds this time and people were overcharged?
That would be the former was the accurate summary there. There were the last two billing cycles earlier in the year had that number of estimated reads. The last quarter, the number that I have is 1,173 actually were done on an estimated read basis. And the new company, so what we essentially have, there are some reasons at times why you have the sensor that reads the meter from the street as you're driving through a neighborhood, and but that connection doesn't work out well for whatever reason. You either continue to just drive and do estimated reads, or you get out of the truck and you take a gun, a meter reading gun if you will, and you tap the meter and get the actual read. It requires a lot more time to do that. The last few billing cycles, the reliance was on estimated reads. With Fleece and Vanderbrink that has now started with us, this last billing cycle went down and reduced the number of estimated reads from 1173 to 80 by going out and doing that manual work of tapping meters and getting the actual read from the meter with that extra step. So the reason why we're having the experience that we're having, and residents are seeing the increased billing in some cases, is because of those estimated reads and getting them trued up to actual with the actual reads that were done in this cycle. So.
Okay. Has there anything been put out regarding that yet?
Communication?
Yeah.
No, I don't think we have done anything on that. We could put something out on Facebook for that. We've been relying on people contacting Fleece and Vanderbrink, but we could do something on that front just to explain it. Maybe that will cut down on some of the volume. I think that they might be through the lion's share of it right now, though. So things have settled down pretty well from the communication standpoint from the residents.
I just know people compared like the same billing cycle, and it's gone up like hundreds of dollars over last year, so that's not sitting well with most people. So maybe just some statement or acknowledgement would be helpful.
I participated in an HOA meeting recently where it came up on that subject as well, and we answered much the same way. So that is something that's on people's mind. We can put something out to explain that further and explain why the things happened the way they did, and then also explain that the next quarter will actually be on the short side from a timing standpoint of the number of months that will be included. So we'll put a piece out on that.
Thank you.
Great idea. Thanks.
Councilmember Gremlin Fox.
I would also like to thank Kathy and Crystal. That's a lot to have to deal with, especially with all those people that you had to get registered at the last minute. That's crazy. I'd like to thank all the people that did vote, whether it was absentee or in person. I would like to welcome Laura, the new DDA Executive Director. I'd also like to share, I had a resident call me that had received one of those bills. They were shocked. I told them to call FBOP. They did, and they wanted me to pass along how professional that they were, and just the customer service was incredible. So I know a lot of times we get negative comments and feedback, so I just wanted to share that positive feedback, so thank you. That's it.
Councilmember Scher.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too would like to welcome Laura Cloutier to the Executive Director position. There was a lot of talk about contracts, et cetera, et cetera. I was more concerned, do we have the right person? And by all accounts, we do. So that's welcome aboard, and look forward to filling up some of those open spaces downtown. Also want to thank Public Safety Director Moore and Fire Chief Roberts. I was participating in some interaction with them on preparations for COVID-19. And I was really impressed by the proactive approach we've exhibited in the public safety areas. Lots of communications with the state, preparations for communications, special training, et cetera. Very impressive, so thank you. That's it. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Resnick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Great job, Kathy and Crystal, again. Another fine election. Welcome, Laura. I too, I believe we have the right person on the job. I'm looking forward to the economic development part, and as well as creating a lot of excitement. I mean, you know, through the whole Oakland County Main Street program, the whole idea is place making, and I think we've got a great start here in Wixom, and now with somebody concentrating on it full time, looking forward to what's coming. So welcome. On that note, at the SOCMA dinner, the South Oakland County Mayors Association dinner, I think in November and December, we talked about the Oakland County Bicentennial, 200-year anniversary. And they had talked about coordinating with cities and villages within Oakland County for coordinating some event where it's going to commemorate the 200-year anniversary. I don't know, has our DDA or Parks and Rec or anybody gotten involved with Oakland County on this?
The tree saplings, or the roots thing that I mentioned is an offshoot of that, if you'll pardon my expression. I'm sorry. So that was something that came up because of that. But we'll follow up on that. I do remember what you're speaking of, and there was like an outside, not an outside, but a committee that was established to kind of foster that and to come up with some events.
Maybe into our Founders Day,
right.
You know,
I'll check
something.
in and see if they've got current plans and make sure that we're not missing out on some opportunities, because that's a good point. So, yeah,
Okay.
I'll talk with them.
Very good. And again, I just want to thank Mr. Meredith. When he comes to the podium, he gives the attaboys and the kudos, which is very rare for someone coming to the podium. So thank you very much, sir.
Very good. Thank you. I too want to welcome Laura to the DDA board, and congratulations. And like I said, I'm looking forward to the cooperation between the two departments, the city and the DDA, to enhance not only the downtown area but the events that we do have. I'm anxious to go out back and look at the new fire truck we have out here, and you know, it's not like buying a car. When you buy a new fire truck, Chief Roberts, how thick is that book that you have that you go through with whatever you need and all that stuff? How thick is that book?
It's about 168 pages.
So there's 168 pages of options and stuff like that on that fire truck that he's got to go through and make sure they're all there. And that's for the safety of our citizens, and we appreciate that. And then I want to thank everybody who voted yesterday, and thank all the poll workers, and thank Kathy and Crystal on a great job. And it was really cool to be. I was up here yesterday during the internet fiasco, and nobody panicked. Nobody did anything. Chief Moore brought his phone over, so we had a hotspot, and he used his PC so they could still stay online. Cheryl Lucas came down and called Comcast and kept in constant contact with them. And just the cooperation, and then later when I came back, later last night, Susan from the finance department's in there helping count ballots and do what they can do, you know, and I started thinking about it, and, you know, this city is really lucky to have the employees that we have. Maryland probably puts in, you know, what, 80-hour work weeks, I don't know, every time I drive by, I see your light on, but, you know, we're really fortunate to have the employees that we have, and it's next man up, let's do what we can do to get things done and get things done right. And I know it's appreciated up here, and I'm sure the citizens appreciate it very much too. And with that, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Ford?
You guys wanted to stay? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.